here. Here I am at Merrythrow Baptist Church, and this particular room, some of you will be comfortable and familiar with this room, and it's got at least three names. Some people call it the New Church Lounge, some people call it the Trogs Room, and some people call it the Youth Room. You may call it something else. The fact is, a few years ago, we employed a youth worker, and his very first vision for the future was to claim this room for the teenagers. And what's more, even though it had been decorated just a few years before, he insisted on redecorating it in order to make it cozier for the future use and needs of the young people. So he came up, not just him, but also the teenagers as well. He came up with this somewhat dubious design that you can probably see behind me. And so, for the moment, we're lumbered with this. The design behind me is also the design opposite. The other two walls, a little bit more conservative. As you can see, we've got a lot in this room, a lot of clutter, a lot of sorting out before everyone comes back to the building. Anyway, so the youth worker, he had a vision for the future, and as the minister of the church, I'm sure you're glad that I have a vision for the future as well. And I'm very much thinking about a number of qualities, 11 in fact, 11 qualities that I think the church will need to demonstrate once we return to the building, which hopefully is not too many months away. 11 points. I'm going to rattle through them quite quickly. You might be relieved to hear. First one, flexibility. We will need flexibility in a changing world. And for all of these points, I've got a little snippet from the Bible to back up the idea. Flexibility in a changing world. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 9, he wrote this: I've become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. What was he saying? He was saying, I need to be flexible. I need to be flexible in order to reach the maximum number of people with the good news of Jesus Christ. And when we come back into the building, we will need flexibility in a changing world. In a world, certainly in the last year, that's changing ever faster, beyond any idea that we had 18 months ago with these problems that we have at the moment. We will need to be flexible. We will need to be capable of bending easily without breaking. That's what flexible means. We will need to be readily adaptable. We will need to be open-minded about what? About doing things differently. So that's point number one, flexibility in a changing world. Point number two, unity. We will need unity in a divided world. Again, the writings of the Apostle Paul in Ephesians, for he has made the two one. He was talking about Jews on the one hand, Gentiles on the other, two coming together. We will need unity in a divided world. And that means at Merrythrow Baptist Church, we will need to welcome and accept whoever God brings into the church. We will need to trust our leaders in the future, even if that sometimes means that we agree to disagree. Flexibility, unity. Point three, truth. We will need truth in a cynical world. A very well-known verse in John chapter 14, the words of Jesus, I am the way and the truth and the life. We will need truth, truth in a cynical world, because the basic gospel message never changes. And we're going to need to hold on to fundamental theological truths such as the deity and the uniqueness of Jesus Christ. Point four is urgency. Urgency in a casual world. And here's a strange verse from Acts chapter 9. It's actually an Ethiopian eunuch, and this is what he said. Look, here is water. What can stand in the way of my being baptized? These days people often delay getting baptized, not so for that eunuch. Here is water, don't need anything else, just started to believe in Jesus. What can stand in the way of my being baptized? Urgency. Urgency is important for us who look to follow Jesus Christ. When we get back to the building, we will need to make the most of every moment that we have to fulfill the purposes of God. Next point, relevance. We will need to be relevant. Relevance in a needy world. Again, an unusual verse, John chapter 4, where Jesus said to a woman, Samaritan woman, "Go call your husband." She answered, "I have no husband." She was in a messy situation. And we need to recognise that modern life is increasingly messy. That means that it's important that we should meet people where they are and certainly not to judge them. Next point, evangelism in a pessimistic world. A verse that might be familiar to you: go into all the world and preach the good news. Mandate of Jesus to the disciples and to us. Evangelism. Evangelism in a pessimistic world. So often in the past we've tended to say to people, come to church, come to our special event. And maybe in the future, instead of saying that kind of thing, we should say that we will come to where you are. We will go out and engage with you in your natural habitat. Instead of expecting people to come to us, we will be ready to go to where they are. Very important to have a go outreach strategy. So, we talked about flexibility, unity, truth, urgency, relevance and evangelism. The first letter of those 6 points, F, flexibility, U for unity, T for truth, U for urgency, R for relevance, E for evangelism. Those 6 letters in that order spells out the word future. Future. And there's more. There's another 5 points to make. In the same kind of vein. Next point, prayer. We will need prayer. Of course, Christians have always needed prayer, always will need prayer. It's the most important thing that we do as followers of Jesus Christ. Prayer. Prayer in a disbelieving world. In Acts chapter 2, we read, they devoted themselves to prayer. What does that mean? Do we have to make it terribly complicated? No, we don't. Keep prayer simple. Keep prayer real. Keep prayer up. But we can achieve nothing truly honouring to God without prayer. It's so important. So we will need to pray when we get back in the building. And pray like we never have before. Next, also incredibly important, love. Love in a selfish world. Romans chapter 12, love must be sincere. Do you know what the most important commandment in the Bible is? It's the exhortation to love God and to love others. Now, of course, we can't like everyone. We can't like everyone that we know, but we can actually love all the people that we know. We can even forgive them. In fact, we have a verse on the board here, which you're going to be able to see. It's been on the board for a long time since we had a prayer day. And I read to you, remember the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. So part of this command to love is the need for us to be ready to forgive others. The two things go together. So we will need love in a selfish world. The next one begins with A, authenticity in a plastic world. Jesus told a story once, and at the end of the story, he concluded in this way. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified. Once I was walking down the street in the north of England, and I found on the ground a £5 note, except it wasn't really a £5 note, it was a trick, because it was a £5 note on one side and it was blank on the other side. Not much use. It looked authentic, but it wasn't authentic. And the problem sometimes with the church is that when people attend the church, after a while they discover that some so-called Christians are not genuine. My exhortation to you as you listen to this message, have the courage to be real. Let's stop being frightened of people. Let's have the courage to be real. Let's stop pretending. Authenticity in a plastic world. 2 more points. Next one is normality. A lot of talk about the new normality. When we get back into the building, normality in a pretentious world. Jesus said these words once, whoever comes to me, I will never drive away. Normality in a pretentious world. Now, of course, we've got used to online church. What's interesting about online church is that it's easier, I think, for people to act normally. There's nobody on a platform. There's no one dressing up. In fact, I've even heard of people coming to Zoom church in their pyjamas. Maybe they've not had their video on, but they've told us they've been wearing their pyjamas, having their breakfast. So people can act normally at a church event when they're on Zoom. And I would say that that's what we should aim for when we're back in the building. Not, of course, to attend in our pyjamas, don't think. But normality, so important. We should aim for a church that's more welcoming and more relaxed. One more point. We're going to need strength. Strength in a fragile world. And for this I go to the Old Testament. Isaiah chapter 40, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. There's a promise. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. And of course, human beings inevitably exhibit weaknesses. It's part and parcel of being human. But God can make us stronger. However, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a lifetime process. So in the meantime, let us make allowances for one another. So we've had 5 more points, 5 more words: prayer, love, authenticity, normality, strength. First letter, P-L-A-N-S. What does that stand for? It stands for plans. And so we've got 11 points. And the 11 points, the first letter of each of the points, we have the 2 words, future plans. And let me encourage you, we've got a new publication. We used to call it The Bigger Picture. We're now calling it The Way. And this message is actually now printed out in this paper so that you can look at it again, and it becomes very obvious that we're thinking about future plans. We're thinking about 11 qualities that the church will need to demonstrate once we return to the building. True of the church generally, and certainly true of the church that many of us attend, which is Meredith Road Baptist Church here in Coventry. So God bless you. Weigh up what I've said, think it over, pray about it, give me your feedback if you're able to. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that the Lord truly blesses you.